following is a presentation of the Belly Up Sports Media Network.
$14:20 in the morning, 14 minutes and 20 seconds worth of sports talk to get you through your daily commute. Hot takes, recaps, best bets, and a little humor to get your day going in the right direction. Sit back, grab your coffee, and let's get into it. All right, 14:20 in the morning for this 5th day of April 2023. Today's show is brought to you by Caldera Lab and calderalab.com. Use promo code 1420LAB at calderalab.com and get 20% off their all-natural men's skincare products. I got it upstairs, or actually I got the products down here. I got some stuff upstairs as well. To already making my my skin get back to its youthful exuberance, like I said earlier on. Thank you once again to Cody Hall for the opening waiting room song. It made my day. She's a staple down here at the 1420 World Headquarters and down in the Yankee Tavern North. Thank you for making us a part of your day, as we do our every day here on Facebook Live and YouTube Live, and I think we float around Twitter or wherever it is. Anyways, the Calgary Flames, another lackluster effort last night in a game that they pretty much have to win. I mean, you have to win all the games, but it gets to this point in the season where you get in a little bit of trouble. And like I've said before, I don't know if this is a Brent original or where it all came from, but when you become a mathematician, your team's probably in trouble. And right now, the Calgary Flames and their fan base are mathematicians. They got to beat this team, got to beat that team. They got a big game tonight in Winnipeg, but I don't know if it's going to matter a whole bunch with the effort that they put in last night. I had it down here, watching in the tavern last night. So I had the Yankee game on as well and everything else going on. It's a sports fan's paradise right now, but you watched that Flames team last night, a lackluster effort almost to a man, bad goaltending, bad forwards, lack of effort. I thought that Sutter didn't coach that team very well last night, running 4 lines when you shouldn't be, benching the wrong guys, having the wrong guys out there as it was going on. The game was a dud. Losing to a team like Chicago, who as a franchise is trying to lose games in the hunt for Connor Bedard to get the phenom out of the Regina Pats, who's lighting it up in the Western Hockey League playoffs, by the way. But to lose to a team like the Chicago Blackhawks last night, when a game that you have to win, and that could be basically just what your season is, and that's who you are. We say it all the time. At some point, you are who your record is. Maybe that game last night is just who the Calgary Flames are and what they are as a franchise. It's not a good sign right last night. Like I said, the Chicago team that has no business being in there. They're just playing out the string, and Calgary's supposed to be playing for their playoff lives and trying to get into a playoff spot, which is a dangerous thing, because if you just become mediocrity, we'll talk about that in a second. But mediocrity, you strive for mediocrity and rarely attain it. That's what you usually are. You're mediocre, and as a franchise for a long time, that's what the Calgary Flames have been. They always laugh at the Vancouver Canucks. Like us Alberta hockey fans are kind of funny how, actually hockey fans right across the country, we laugh at the Vancouver Canucks for being mediocre for forever and just making the playoffs. It happens in Calgary year after year. You look at their playoff success over the last how many years, there hasn't been much. They might fall into a playoff round once or twice. They usually lose in the second round. They don't get to the third very often. You think about the last time they had any amount of success was 2004, which is a very, very long time ago. That's 19 years ago, and that only happened because they fell into a goaltender by the name of Mika Kiprasov that everybody else pretty much gave up on. Like in San Jose, that's where he came from. They gave up on him because they had other guys in net, and Sutter knew him from coaching there in the past, and that's why the Flames ran into success from at that point. But it wasn't very much. Not much success since then. You look at that game last night. Nazem Kadri was an absolute embarrassment. He was the cause of 2 goals at least. He's was very vocal about how things are, and Nazem Kadri, like, I like him as a player, and I like him as a like how he is. He's outspoken. He says what's on his mind, but sometimes he just needs to shut up and look himself in the mirror. He was very critical of the way Sutter coaches and the way Sutter talks about his players. Sometimes the way he's not the most positive guy. But you know what? If you play well, usually you get a pat in the back. Like I've said before, a pat in the back is only 2 feet from a kick in the ass, right? And Kadri, he's got to look himself in the mirror. Before you signed that big contract, you knew who the coach was in Calgary. You knew how he was. The hockey world is a very small world, and Kadri's got to find a way to make him to zip his yap a little bit, because he was the reason why the team lost that game last night. I shouldn't say the sole reason. They had bad goaltending, but Kadri was really bad. And for him to go out there and to be vocal like he was about Sutter a couple weeks back. He should have been going out there night after night and playing. But maybe it's a situation you have there, and I think it's across professional sports where your managers and ownership force the coach's hand on who gets to play, because these guys are making a lot of money, and you're not going to play a guy who's making 500 grand to go out there and hope that they win. You're going to put out the guy you're paying $6 million, who's you're paying to help your team win, is supposed to win, and that's a guy that Kadri was supposed to be. We were all gangbusters here last in the area about when they went out and got Kadri, who won a Stanley Cup with Colorado last year. But to have him playing the way he did last night, it was a bad look on Kadri last night, and the way he just didn't seem to care, and the way that they kind of played, they rolled the lines out there in Calgary last night. It wasn't good, and they're not getting goaltending like that, and that's the biggest thing. When you're not getting goaltending, that's a bad thing. And they're running with Markstrom, and I've said before, you got to run with a guy who got you there. But in a game that they should have won last night, maybe they could have had Markstrom sitting on the bench last night, or maybe in the stands, or maybe already in Winnipeg. Who knows? Because tonight's game's a big one for the Calgary Flames. And having your number one guy, having him rested, because that was a game that they should have been able to just walk through and win last night with Chicago Blackhawks, but they didn't. But the biggest issue that you got in Calgary is that they just don't have the horses. And year in, year out, they just put Band-Aids on things. And this is a lot of teams do it. When you think your team's close and you're losing in the first round, you're usually not. I mean, there are some outliers. I think the Leafs are close. I shouldn't say close. They're closer than Calgary, right? So it's one of those things. Like Edmonton's close. Like they're right there. They're getting some goaltending from Skinner, but we'll stick with the Flames. Like the Flames have been just close for a lot of years in ownership's eyes, and they don't do much. They go out and get a player, and they get a Band-Aid here and they get a Band-Aid there. Yeah, they had two guys who defected pretty much over the summer with Tkachuk and with Johnny Gaudreau, but in general, they're not close. They have teams that are okay, make the playoffs, win a round, and that's all they're going to do. And they don't have any guys that you look at are going to be generational type players or Hall of Fame type players. And like, that's tough to get. But you look at every team, almost you go down the roster, Stanley Cup champions over the last 20 years, they're generational talents on those teams. You have, like, Washington only won the one with Alex Ovechkin, but you have Pittsburgh, you have Los Angeles teams that won some. They have Sherlock Hall of Fame guys on those squads. Yes, winning a Stanley Cup helps your Hall of Fame cause. I get it, but then you look at Chicago, who's got Hall of Fame type players, a generational player in Patty Kane. Is Taves a generational player? No, he's a Hall of Fame player. He's not a generational player, but Patty Kane's is the greatest American hockey player to ever play the game, probably. I don't think that's too disputable. So when you get a generational type of player like they have on those teams, like I talked about, maybe the only team that didn't get that kind of a generational type player or Hall of Fame type guys is the 2019 team, the St. Louis Blues, who won that Stanley Cup on the backs of Sheena Easton and the song Gloria. And that's almost they got on each other's backs that year. But in general, you have to break it down to almost nothing, and then draft well, and then get guys through free agency. You can't just keep going with the same guys year after year and hoping that your team's going to do okay. And then having ownership group that just gets guys and just wants people in the building, wants to have a few guys here and there. It doesn't work. You have to break it down. Pittsburgh was awful, and then they went out and got Crosby, and then they got Malkin, and then and Letang. You look at those two teams, the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Los Angeles Kings. They had a base of 3 or 4 guys who each played 1,000 games each for that franchise, and they went out and won Stanley Cups. Like, they had Drew Doughty, Anze Kopitar, and Dustin Brown there, and then they got a great goaltender, Jonathan Quick. That's what you need to do to build a franchise with the hopes of winning the Stanley Cups. And I named those players, and that's just with the hopes of winning a cup. That's no guarantee. So when Calgary, you look at the guys they've had over the years, like Jarome Iginla, Mika Kiprasov, and who's their goalie been ever since? Really, and Jarome Iginla and Kiprasov is how many years ago? Like, it just doesn't work to have guys that just aren't going to do it, and just to put Band-Aids on things with the hopes of getting it. And then what happens is, if you make the playoffs like they just might do, or they miss the playoffs, which is more likely to happen, they're in a situation where they are going to end up drafting 17th overall. And then who's that? Because basically after the top 10, all the rest of the players are just guys with the hopes that are going to help you out. Like that game last night, you got to win that hockey game last night, because that Calgary team should have been desperate to win, because that was a Chicago team that's pretty much, or Chicago franchise that's desperate to lose. Now with that win last night, they actually fall into a tie with the Columbus Blue Jackets for 32nd spot in the National Hockey League. That franchise doesn't want wins right now, so you wonder what that dressing room is like, or the world headquarters in Chicago is like, by getting that win. They're probably giving Luke Richardson, the head coach of Chicago Blackhawks, a bit of a stern finger wagging, I guess you could say. Hey, don't be doing that. Don't be winning hockey games. We can't afford to be winning games. We're tanking for Bedard, and that's what they're trying to do, because that's what you need to do to win a Stanley Cup. You look at teams like that's why I said like Toronto probably has a better chance of winning a Stanley Cup right now than most teams do, because they went out and they do have a generational player in Austin Matthews. They have a guy, he's having a tough season this year. Turns out he's had a bad wrist, and you can't shoot the puck as well as he did last year when he got 60 goals or whatever it was. But they have generational guys. They have a Mitch Marner, but they don't have a defense. They don't have goaltending. So like how close are they? You look at Edmonton. They've been weak forever. They've had a lot of first-round draft picks, but it's all kind of coming together now with guys like McDavid, obviously, with Draisaitl. Nugent Hopkins was a first overall pick how many years ago? Yeah, it's been a long time, but it's all kind of coming together. You have to completely break it down and have almost bare bone shelf to have any chance of winning, because it's hard. Because now what happens is you get guys that want just contracts. You get a guy like Kadri, who's in not the twilight of his career, but he's on the back nine of his career. That's all of a sudden he's got 4 or 5 years left, and all of a sudden that 4 or 5 turns into 8 years, because that's what the contracts get, and that's what the marketplace is, with hopes of winning. It doesn't make sense to go out and give these guys, especially with the speed of the game now and the way the game is played now, to go out and pay for 30 and 30, 31, 32-year-old guys. I don't understand why these GMs do it and why these owners do it, just with the hopes of winning, because Calgary's not close. And that effort last night showed it. Is it just a backlash of Sutter? Could be. Is it lack of goaltending? Could be. Is it just lack of talent? Could be. Or you know what? When you have all three of those things put together, that's what it is. It's just not a good hockey team right now. They probably would be better off to not make the playoffs. But you make the playoffs, it's 2 home dates, and then that's extra money in the owners' pockets. And that's what a lot of these owners want. They just want a few more home dates, and there has to be some sort of a realization or in Calgary Flames at world headquarters with the Flames in the Ivory Towers that they weren't going to win a Stanley Cup this year, and maybe falling apart and saying, okay, we lost our 2 best guys. Let's play some younger guys and see what we got. But then you have a competitive coach like Sutter, and you have guys that you're spending so much money on. What are you going to do? You can't not try to win. You can't not try to put a decent team on the ice when you're spending 70 whatever $1 million on your franchise. And it's tough to get these kids to play when you have 12, 14, 15 million bucks sitting on the bench. You can't expect the Flames fan base to say, okay, let's play the kids and see what we can do. It just doesn't work that way. Like it's such a tough thing to do, and it's so hard to get through it all. And you just wonder what the steps ahead for the Calgary Flames is going to be, and for a lot of these National Hockey League teams that think that they're close. Because when you think you're close, you're probably not. Like you are probably not, and you have a deep down realization that your team isn't very good. And you're not going to be winning anything this year. You got to think that the Boston Bruins. Do they have a guarantee to win anything? No, that's going to be a tough run to go through, even though they have 120 points, whatever it is already before the season's over, 3 or 4 games left. And the thing about the National Hockey League is you want to be in a situation right now in a playoff spot, confirmed, so you can rest a couple of guys. Now the Flames, if they have a chance of getting in, if the Winnipeg Jets have a chance of getting in, there's tough games ahead for them, so they're not going to be able to rest. Yes, you get a few days off before you start the playoffs, but to a man, you want to be able to rest some guys at this point in the season and say, okay, here's what we got. Let's take a seat and give our older bodies a little bit of rest, because of the Stanley Cup playoffs and especially the first round. It's a gauntlet, and it's tough. Toronto's got a tough go. They could probably sit a few guys right now. Tampa's they had a tough go all season long. They can rest some guys. That's who they're playing in the first round, whether it's at home or away. Me and Dave talked about that the other night on 1420. Would you rather start at home or on the road? And that's a funny thing, because Overdrive was talking about it yesterday. They're stealing our material a little bit on Overdrive on TSN and out of Toronto. But it's crazy how you think that these teams think that they have a chance and they really don't. And like it's hard start to see ownership being very happy, or maybe they are. Maybe they're making enough money where they say, okay, good enough. But you would think that maybe ownership would want to see what they got. And if a team's not doing well with the guys that they're spending 15, 16 million bucks for a first line, where you got two guys making $7.5 million, whatever it may be, and they're not doing anything, putting them on the bench might not be the worst thing, and the fan base might appreciate it more to put a fourth liner out there and see what they can do. Because if they score, it can't be any worse than what they got out of Kadri last night. To put a kid out there to say, hey, okay, give it a shot, and have Kadri on the bench. But then you get management saying, why is he on the bench? We're paying him this much money, and analytics say that he has a better chance of getting a goal. His expected goal differential is higher than the other kids. And that's where the analytics go completely wrong. It's tough. It's tough to win, and you got to have guys who are Hall of Famers. You got to have generational type guys to win in the National Hockey League, almost to every sport. And to just plug guys in and overpay them, which most franchises do because the market value says this, I think that's got to change. I'm not pro owner. I'm not anti-player, because I think that they're all underpaid in every sport. I think these guys are the top of their game no matter what. And I think these guys should be getting paid a lot more, but the revenue says this and everything else. So it's another story for another day. But when your guys aren't producing, have them sit on the bench, because if they're not winning after game 78 and you put an effort in like that, you're not doing yourselves any favors. And it's tough for the fan base to watch that and to have to listen to that night after night with the talking heads on Afterburner. I was watching them last night, and the fan base in Calgary, they're pissed. They're not happy with Kadri, with Sutter, the goaltending, and everything else. But it goes right to the top with Brad Treliving, that maybe they just signed the wrong guys, or maybe it comes right from ownership. Who knows? But I'm sure it's in every fan base. I'm sure it's in Winnipeg. I'm sure it's in Vancouver. I'm sure it's all over everywhere. That these franchises just don't get it. That they don't get it, that just plugging guys in and putting a Band-Aid over a bullet wound isn't going to do anything. And you really have to make things a little bit better and break things right down, find generational talent, find Hall of Famers, and that's how you win. And that's the only way you win. Does winning make you a Hall of Famer? Yes, absolutely. How do you know who a Hall of Famer is once the season starts, or once they're drafted in the first round or the fourth round or the sixth round or wherever it may be? You don't know until you get going a little bit. But having guys who are just plugs, not plugs, just plugging guys in and hoping that they are great players, you're never going to win anything that way. And inserting player A and player B into a lineup, it never works, because there has to be a bit of a blend inside the dressing room as well. There has to be building of a team bonding, and just plugging A and B into the franchise. It never ever works. And well, anyways, there's my rant for that. I could have talked about that all day long. We don't have time. We're gonna get 14:20 in the morning. I'm already past the time limit, the 14:20 in the morning. But anyways, on this day in 1981, the Philadelphia Flyers under coach Pat Quinn lost 2-0 at the Spectrum. 2-0 to New York Rangers. The Flyers received 4 penalty minutes to add to their what was then an NHL team record 4 penalty minutes of 2,621 PIMs for the season. That's surpassed by 4 other teams, and currently held. The penalty record is currently held by the Buffalo Sabres right now. In 1991-92, they had 2,713 penalty minutes in the 91-92 season. Stumbled a little bit, but anyways, you look at this video if you're watching on YouTube later on, or if you're watching live. Thank you very much for doing it. This brawl between the Flyers and the Canucks, that was the Wild West back then. I couldn't believe that was a part of the game that we love and cherish to this day. But anyways, happy birthday to, kind of loose on birthdays lately, but happy birthday to current New York Islander Bo Horvat, born on this day in London, Ontario in 1995. Horvat was drafted the first round, 9th overall by the Vancouver Canucks after playing for his hometown London Knights. Horvat was traded this year to the New York Islanders from Vancouver. He's currently on an 8-year, $8.5 million per year contract. He has 37 goals and 28 assists so far this season, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Bo Horvat. Bo Horvat has 65 points, and he's going to be making $68 million, $8.5 million a year. Seems like a bit of an overpayment for me for a guy who's okay. Is he a generational guy? No. Is he a good player? Yeah, but half that money, I think, is what those guys should be going for, because it's hard to put the rest of the franchise together and the rest of the team together. But if that's what the going rate is, that's what the going rate is, and I'm not going to change that in the hockey world. Anyways, Yeah, being mediocre just makes it on Spotify, Apple, Insta, whatever thing, following us on YouTube and the like. So make sure you guys talk to people about the show, get it out there, keep it going. We enjoy putting these shows out for you. Dave and I are back tomorrow night. We got another 14:20 in the morning, like every day, starting about 8 o'clock every day. We'll get these out there. That's 8 Mountain Time. So maybe I'll try to get up a little bit early, but sometimes you never know what could happen. Anyways, that's 14:20 in the morning for this April the 5th, 2023. Remember, everybody, it doesn't matter where you are. It's who you're with. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you tomorrow. You just listened to the 1420 Sports Bar Podcast. 4 beer with sports talk and a whole lot more. We are part of the Belly Up Media Network. Let's get into it.